Howdy. This week we've been talking about purpose and spreading the gospel. Now, yesterday we spoke about how Stephen was speaking to people about what he knew, about how God had revealed himself to the people in this world. Before he ever got into anything about the life hereafter, he started with the life here. Now, we also want to recognize that Stephen wasn't spending his time jumping from passage to passage. He just told about what he knew out of his heart, things that he saw. We want to do something that is similar, but from a different perspective in Acts 17 from Paul. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God, in the hope that they might feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given us assurance to all by raising him from the dead. Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, We will hear you again about this. So Paul went out from their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dionysius the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. Now, a couple things we want to take note of in this. First, Paul makes sure that he speaks to people from their experience, making sure that they're able to understand where he's coming from. His is very different from Stephen's, because Stephen is speaking to people who have a Jewish background. Paul is speaking to the Greeks. So he's going to talk from more of a philosophical, more generic kind of understanding of what Greeks would have looked at the time. See, that doesn't mean that he was backing off on the gospel. The thing is that not quoting the Bible or not speaking from a Judeo-Christian background doesn't mean that we're abandoning the gospel. But rather, as we get to know people and we understand their lives, what we can do is we can see how their perspectives overlap with what we know about God, Father, Son, and Spirit, and we're able to show the overlap and start from there. But notice he did eventually get to the resurrection, which was offensive to some people. The thing is that just because something we believe is hard to believe doesn't mean that we avoid it. It just means that we understand sometimes we have to start where people are at first. And not everyone's going to accept it, but we have to respect that. We have to respect ourselves enough to admit to what we believe to be true. We have to respect other people to allow them not to believe it if they don't wish. But we also have to realize that we have to meet people where they are in the story that we have, which is why we need to practice speaking our faith in so many different contexts at so many different times to get comfortable with it. And the thing is, my question to you is this: how often do you speak about your faith? And are you afraid to do so because you're afraid that you might use the wrong words?